Following Pervez Musharraf's dramatic resignation, Pakistan's ruling coalition remains deeply divided over his fate and who his successor should be. So just how fractured is the government in Islamabad? And what does this all mean for Washington's so-called war on terror? This is Inside Story. Hello, I'm Darren Jordan. Well, leaders of the ruling coalition in Pakistan have met in the capital Islamabad to discuss who will succeed their long-term opponent, former President Pervez Musharraf. Yet Musharraf's departure seems to have underlined the deep divisions within the ruling coalition, as Kamal Haider now reports.
Carnage at a hospital in Pakistan's troubled northwest. At least 23 people died as a bomb exploded at the gates of the hospital in Dera Ismail Khan district. Police say it may have been a suicide bomb targeting Shia Muslims. Over 200 people died in sectarian violence in August alone. Just one of the problems President Musharraf's successors will have to tackle. As Pakistanis got used to life after the general, lawyers took to the streets outside the home of Chief Justice Musharraf deposed. They want Iftikhar Muhammad Chaudhry reinstated. But politicians may not agree. While the PMLN Nawaz has been demanding nothing short of an unconditional restoration, the PPP may not want him back, for fear he may challenge the validity of a deal agreed by Musharraf and Benazir Bhutto that provided amnesty from prosecution for all past allegations, protecting PPP leader Asif Ali Zardari. The nation's daily papers were full of scorn and sarcasm. Going, gone. And Musharraf quits with his tail between his legs. Many in Pakistan believe Musharraf's departure will not mean the end of the country's problems.
At this time, Pakistan's future is not reliable. At this position, Pakistan's future is, we don't know what is going to be happen now.
There are just a few, I would say, a few families which have been ruling Pakistan ever since it has been made. So unless and until they are there, I don't think we can expect anything from them.
Now Parliament is set to meet on Wednesday to discuss the election of the new president. Amongst the contenders, Faryal Talpur, sister of Asif Ali Zardari, Mahmood Khan Achakzai, chairman of the left-wing Pashtun Milli Awami Party in Baluchistan, and Asfandyar Wali Khan, a seasoned campaigner and the leader of the Awami National Party, who opposes the Taliban's influence within Pakistan. President Musharraf says he wants to stay in Pakistan no matter what the charges are, but with a growing demand from the National Assembly for holding him accountable and, of course, the security risk, the question is, will he be able to stay in this country or not? Kamal Haider for Inside Story, Islamabad.
Well, joining us now are our guests in Islamabad, Zaid Hamid. He's a security analyst at Brass Tacks, that's a defence and security analysis service. In Dubai, Javed Malik. He's a Pakistan ambassador advising on the Middle East and Europe. And in New York, Andy Martin. He's an expert on US foreign policy and author of the new book, Obama, the Man Behind the Mask. Gentlemen, welcome all to the programme. Javed Malik in Dubai, let me start with you, if I may. Pakistan's coalition, of course, put aside their differences when they agreed to impeach Pervez Musharraf. But how much has his resignation underlined those deep divisions within the coalition?
Well, Darren, I don't quite agree that there are divisions in the coalition. There are differences of opinion that may exist, and essentially there are two schools of thought. First of all, the coalition is united towards Pakistan's march towards democracy. I think the difference only exists in the way Mr. Musharraf may be dealt with, while the one school of thought says that a safe passage would be sufficient. Another school of thought exists that talk about his trial. Now, this is the beauty of democracy, that you can have differences and yet work together. And I don't see them as deep divisions, rather teething problems for a country that has been under military rule for a long time and is now moving steadily and surely towards sustainable and real democracy.
OK, let's put that point to Zaid Hamid in Islamabad. Zaid Hamid, I mean, what sort of Pakistan has Musharraf left for those coalition partners to run? I mean, how much of a crisis do you think the country's in?
You see, Musharraf has left Pakistan into more dangerous hands for very simple reason is that if you realize why Musharraf was impeached, let's get to that question first. the process of impeachment of Musharraf got its momentum after the botched coup against the ISI. And before the Prime Minister's visit to the United States, there was an attempt made to tame ISI, because for quite some time the Americans have been giving the signal that ISI is protecting Pakistan's national interests more than it is lending a helping hand to the American foreign policy agenda in the region. And it was decided to tame the ISI before Americans could do anything. And the attempt was made before the Prime Minister's visit to the United States. ISI was brought under Ministry of Interior, which was nothing less than a coup against ISI. And the three people who resisted this coup, and to such an extent, by 3 o'clock in the morning, the orders had to be reversed. And one of them was President Musharraf. And obviously, it was decided that Musharraf has become more of a problem than being part of the solution for the American foreign policy here, and has to be removed. And then, it was only then that the process was initiated. And I do not think that process is going to stop at Musharraf. The second stage would be the appointment of a pro-government person, or a pro-PPP person, or a pro-American foreign policy person in the presidency. The third step would be probably the change of the DG ISI, or bringing the ISI under the Ministry of Interior. So if these steps are followed, if you see the wisdom behind impeachment of Musharraf at this stage, then I think he has left Pakistan in a very dangerous hands.
Okay, well, let's just talk about the American involvement and bring in Andy Martin in New York into the discussion. Andy Martin, Musharraf has often been described as a US poodle, but he didn't do everything the Americans wanted him to do. So, I mean, was Musharraf a much shrewder man than we give him credit for?
I think that's a very fair assessment. I think he was a nationalist leader, and I think the fact that he left peacefully without a shot being fired is a strong sign that he expects democracy to endure. I would not at all be surprised to see Musharraf resurface. One of the problems we've had in Pakistan is this poisonous environment where each government has to imprison its predecessor, drive them into exile. It's a very destabilizing factor. Here in the United States, of course, a lot of people don't like President Bush, but they're not going to drive him into exile or imprison him. So I think all of this reflects a peaceful transition of power, probably reflects less American policy than the growing pains of democracy. It's not a perfect system, and it's not a neat system, and it's not a military system. And as the first caller said, there are differences of opinion, there are rivalries, there are jealousies. You see all that in Washington, you see it in London. Why won't you see it in Islamabad? That's just normal and healthy.
Okay, well, let's bring him back, Javed Malik, there in Dubai. Javed Malik, the spotlight now is clearly on what happens to Musharraf. I mean, Nawaz Sharif and the PMLN say he should stand trial. Asif Ali Zardari and the PPP are saying, well, you know, let's take a softer line and perhaps make him immune from prosecution. But I mean, these are huge differences of opinion, aren't they? I mean, can they get across those?
Well, I would just like to address the point that our friend in Islamabad made about ISI and how they want to tame ISI. I would like to just remind him that ISI or any other institution is a state institution. It is under civilian control. And the Prime Minister, when he went to America, ISI was and is supposed to be under the control of the Prime Minister. And that is how it is. In terms of your question, yes, there are differences, as I said, about the way Mr. Musharraf may be dealt with. But I think that it is important also to understand that the constitutional process will take its toll. Mr. Musharraf, if he has done any wrongs, as he has said in his speech that he made yesterday, that he has made some mistakes, and he has let the people decide, he has left it to the people to decide that. Now, in terms of the differences, I think that there are the next 72 hours are very important. The coalition partners have not yet decided. They are in a process of deciding. And very important point, there will be, of course, the reinstatement of judges, which is another unfinished agenda, as it were, of the 18 February elections. People were promised that they will be restored. And that is what is being deliberated during the discussions within the coalition partners. But I would like to say to you that Pakistan is making progress towards democracy. And not just the Americans, but all our friends around the world are in fact looking at it positively, and Pakistanis itself also feel a positive change towards democracy, and that is something that needs to be encouraged.
OK, let's bring in back Andy Martin there in New York and just expand on that point about the military and the intelligence services. I mean, Andy Martin, how do you see Pakistan's military and, more importantly, the intelligence services positioning themselves now that Musharraf has gone? I mean, we know, for example, that the Army Chief, General Kayani, has perhaps moved to align himself to the new civilian government.
Well, I think there's always going to be a little healthy tension between allies. Whoever's elected, whether it's Senator Obama or Senator McCain, as I previously indicated, the war on terror, and as Senator McCain said this past weekend, following Osama bin Laden to the gates of hell is going to be a very important priority of the U.S. government. But I think they can work together. I think there's been a belief in the past in Washington that the ISI was just a little too concerned with regional politics and not concerned with the broader implications of what's happening in the northwest frontier. The other thing that isn't mentioned, and I think is very critical, is to see how the relationship with India transitions. It's time for India and Pakistan to start resolving their differences peacefully. The peaceful transition of power in India and the economic ties with America have been a tremendous asset to India. I think any new president, and certainly even President Bush, is going to want to encourage stability, economic development. These are the kinds of things that make long-term gains for the population and are the best weapons against terrorism: economic prosperity, freedom, tolerance. So a peaceful transfer of power is always a good thing. I would hope that in Pakistan they don't put the president on trial and they break this circle of endless, poisonous transfers of power. Pakistan has not recovered from what was done 30 years ago and 20 years ago. It's time just for people to accept that there are differences and sit down and yell and scream and pound on the table, but not make military issues out of them, and certainly not make political persecution out of it.
OK, gentlemen, stay with us, won't you? Because it's time for a short break now. But when we come back, we look at the impact of Musharraf's resignation on the Pakistani role in the war on terror in the region. Stay with us, won't you?